I am Victoria Thorne, 34 years old, and currently the Director of Operations at Viridian Estates, a leading luxury property firm within the wider Solara Group. My world, the world as it should be, is one of structure, logic, and meticulously applied principles. I don't see chaos. I see systems awaiting optimization. My office at Viridian Estates, perched on the 12th floor, offers a panoramic view of the burgeoning cityscape, a sprawling, organic entity that I often imagine as a series of interconnected circuits, each needing careful calibration. The firm itself, before my arrival, felt much the same, a patchwork of individual fiefdoms, driven by an antiquated, almost romantic notion of independent salesmanship. My mandate, as I understood it and articulated it to the Solara Group board, was to transform this into a cohesive, high-performance machine. I had spent the past 18 months meticulously drafting new protocols, refining our client management software, a proprietary system I personally designed for Viridian, codenamed Atlas, and standardizing every aspect of our client engagement process. My philosophy, honed over years in corporate efficiency roles and academic study, dictates that a truly superior outcome is achieved not through sporadic brilliance, but through consistent, replicable, and ethical practice. The emotional, unpredictable human element, while necessary, must be contained and guided by a robust framework. This systematic approach, however, brought me into direct conflict with certain entrenched elements, specifically individuals who thrived in the very chaos I sought to eliminate. Marcus Holloway was the most prominent among them. Marcus was, unequivocally, our top performer. His sales figures dwarfed those of any other agent, consistently exceeding targets, often by a significant margin. He was a force of nature in sales, closing deals that others deemed impossible, charming reluctant buyers, and somehow conjuring opportunities from thin air. He brought in revenue undeniable and substantial. Yet, Marcus was also, by my definition, an agent of disorder. His behavior was a persistent abrasion against the polished surface of my carefully constructed environment. He had a booming laugh that echoed through the otherwise subdued open-plan office, often punctuated by off-colored jokes that, while not explicitly violating our updated professional conduct guidelines, certainly danced on the precipice of inappropriateness. He was dismissive of the administrative staff, treating them less like colleagues and more like personal assistants, often ignoring their requests for paperwork or crucial updates. He refused to adopt the Atlas system, citing its unnecessary complexities and insisting his own Rolodex of contacts was far more effective. His client communications, while highly successful, were often informal, bordering on brusque, devoid of the refined Viridian tone I had painstakingly developed. I had numerous documented instances of complaints from support staff regarding his tone, from junior agents feeling undermined by his casual dismissiveness of their efforts, and even subtle feedback from certain high-net-worth clients who found his aggressive charm a little too unrefined. I saw him not as an asset, but as a flaw in the system. His success, while impressive on paper, came at the cost of team morale, procedural integrity, and the very brand image I was striving to build for Viridian Estates. He was a rogue variable, a statistical anomaly that skewed our data and undermined the predictability I craved. He demonstrated that individualistic, non-compliant behavior could yield results, which contradicted the fundamental tenet of my belief system, that adherence to the correct, ethical, and structured process must lead to superior, sustainable outcomes. To allow Marcus to continue was to validate inefficiency and disrespect for the very framework that, in my theoretical model, was the bedrock of true organizational success. It was a matter of principle. The decision to terminate Marcus Holloway was not made lightly, though it was, to me, an entirely logical and inevitable conclusion. For weeks, I had meticulously documented every infraction, every instance of noncompliance, every piece of negative feedback. I cross-referenced these with our updated employee handbook, the very one I had personally revised to include stricter clauses on professional conduct, adherence to company procedures, and collaborative spirit. Marcus, predictably, had signed off on receiving a copy, but had clearly disregarded its contents. My legal team, a formidable ensemble from Solara Group's corporate headquarters, reviewed the file. It's airtight, Victoria, their lead counsel MS. Albright confirmed during our last consultation. His performance clauses are linked to adherence to company policy. He's in breach. You've given him ample written warnings, multiple opportunities for corrective action, and he's chosen not to engage. No liability issues here. This was precisely the validation I needed. My perspective was clear. Marcus was a cancer, and while he was producing a significant yield of malignant cells, his presence threatened the health of the entire organism. Removing him was not punitive, it was prophylactic. It was a necessary step towards building the high-performance, ethically sound, and fully integrated team Viridian Estates deserved. I understood that there would be a temporary dip in revenue. I had factored that into my projections. But it would be a cleansing fire, paving the way for sustainable, systemic growth, driven by a united team operating under a clear, effective framework. The right way, in my calculus, always yields superior long-term results, even if the immediate data might initially suggest otherwise. The practice was simply lagging behind the theory, and it was my role to bring it into alignment. On a crisp Tuesday morning, I called Marcus into my office. He sauntered in, a casual smile playing on his lips, probably expecting another one of my process optimization lectures, which he always seemed to humor with thinly veiled amusement. He was wearing an expensive, impeccably tailored suit, but with a slightly loosened tie and an air of effortless defiance that I found inherently irritating. I noted his posture, too relaxed, not fully engaged, already mentally elsewhere. This, in itself, was a minor breach of the professional decorum I expected. Marcus, I began, my voice even, devoid of any emotional inflection. Thank you for coming. Please sit. He leaned back in the chair opposite my desk, crossing one leg over the other, a picture of nonchalance. I've reviewed your performance metrics and your adherence to company policies over the past 18 months, specifically since the implementation of our new operational standards. I pushed a slender, precisely organized folder across my desk towards him. It contained every warning, every email documenting his refusal to use Atlas, every complaint from colleagues, all meticulously dated and annotated. While your individual sales figures remain exceptional, your consistent disregard for established protocols, your lack of engagement with team initiatives, and your repeated breaches of our professional conduct guidelines have created a detrimental environment for the wider team. His smile faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of irritation. Come on, Victoria. We both know what matters around here. I bring in the numbers. Everything else is just noise. My clients don't care about your Atlas system. They care about me getting them the best property at the best price. And I do that better than anyone. He gestured vaguely at the folder. All that is just paperwork. It doesn't reflect the real work. It reflects our standard, Marcus, I countered, meeting his gaze directly. And a company is only as strong as its standards. We've offered you repeated opportunities to align with these, to integrate into the team, to utilize the tools designed for efficiency. You have consistently declined. Effective immediately, your employment with Viridian Estates is terminated. The nonchalance vanished, replaced by a stark, almost predatory glint in his eyes. He leaned forward, his casual posture gone. You're firing me? The top earner? For not using your fancy software and telling a few jokes. There was an incredulous laugh, devoid of humor. You really think this company can afford to lose me, Victoria? You really think those protocols of yours will make up for my client base? He paused, his gaze hardening. Because I can tell you, my clients are loyal to me, not to Viridian. You think they'll stick around for your Atlas system? Your client relationships are the property of Viridian Estates, Marcus, as per your employment contract, I stated, my voice unwavering. Any attempt to solicit them for a competitor would constitute a breach of that contract and lead to legal action. I knew this was true theoretically. In practice, however, client loyalty could be a nebulous, deeply personal thing. But I wouldn't concede that point. My system needed to be seen as impregnable. Human Resources will be in touch regarding your severance package and exit procedures. Your access to company systems will be revoked at the end of this meeting. Please return your company devices to HR on your way out. He stared at me for a long moment, a slow, knowing smile returning, but this one was cold, without mirth. All right, Victoria. You do things your way. Let's see how that works out for Viridian. You think you're clearing out the toxic elements. I think you're about to find out what really keeps the lights on around here. He pushed himself out of the chair, not bothering to close the folder. He simply walked out, his steps still surprisingly light, leaving a peculiar silence in his wake. My office felt cleaner, lighter, purged. I felt a profound sense of accomplishment, a victory for order and principle. In the immediate aftermath of Marcus's dour, a palpable change swept through the Viridian Estates office. The boisterous energy that often accompanied Marcus was gone, replaced by a quiet diligence that warmed me. Agents were now consistently using the Atlas system, inputting client data with a meticulousness that had previously been elusive. Meetings became more focused, discussions centered on strategy and process, rather than anecdotes of Marcus's latest audacious deal. Morale, I initially observed, seemed to improve among the support staff and junior agents. They worked with a newfound ease, free from the shadow of his unpredictable demands and dismissive attitude. Several colleagues approached me privately, expressing their relief, praising my courage for addressing what they had perceived as a long-standing issue. It was the right thing to do, Victoria, one senior agent confided, for the culture, if nothing else. I nodded, a quiet satisfaction settling over me. This was the validation of my theory. A healthy environment would inevitably lead to a higher-performing team. The temporary dip in sales would be easily absorbed by the renewed collective effort. However, the initial calm began to dissipate within weeks, subtly at first, then with increasing urgency. The anticipated dip in sales wasn't merely a dip, it was a noticeable, sustained decline. New client inquiries, which Marcus had an uncanny knack for generating, dwindled. Our market share, particularly in the high-end residential sector where he specialized, began to erode. I attributed this initially to market fluctuations, perhaps a seasonal slowdown, or even a lingering effect of Marcus's chaotic influence. I initiated additional training sessions on prospecting and client retention, emphasizing the Viridian way of relationship building, a more structured and less aggressive approach. I pushed my team harder, urging them to leverage Atlas more effectively, to follow every lead, to maximize every opportunity within the system. Then came the news that Marcus Holloway had joined Solstice Properties, a smaller, more agile competitor known for its aggressive tactics and highly personalized client service. This was troubling, but not entirely unexpected. What truly stung, what truly began to unravel the meticulous fabric of my projections, was the speed and scale of client defections. Long-standing Viridian clients, relationships we had believed were cemented by our brand and comprehensive services, began to migrate to Solstice. They weren't just any clients, they were often the most lucrative, the ones Marcus had personally cultivated, often over years. Their loyalty, it turned out, was indeed to him, not to the institution, not to the Viridian way. They say Marcus offers them a level of personalized attention we can't match, one of my remaining senior agents reported, a hint of resignation in his voice after losing a major development deal. He knows their kids' names, their golf handicaps, their preferred coffee. And he still delivers results, even if he rubs people the wrong way sometimes. They don't care about our professionalism as much as they care about the bottom line and feeling understood. I found this explanation profoundly frustrating. How could basic human connection, a mere familiarity with personal trivia, override the superior systemic support, the ethical guidelines, and the comprehensive resources Viridian Estates provided? It defied all rational expectation. My theoretical model, which posited that quality service and a robust framework would inevitably win out, was clashing violently with the messy, illogical reality of human preference. As the weeks bled into months, the financial impact became undeniable. Quarterly reports, once a source of pride, became a stark reflection of my decision. Revenue targets, which had always been stretch goals, now seemed laughably out of reach. The Solara Group board, initially supportive of my cleanup initiatives, began to ask sharper, more pointed questions. My presentations, filled with detailed analyses of improved internal efficiencies, enhanced team morale, and long-term strategic advantages, started to ring hollow against the backdrop of shrinking profit margins. I found myself emphasizing the process more and more, almost defensively, because the results were no longer there to speak for themselves. I blamed market conditions, the aggressive tactics of competitors like Solstice Properties, and even the residual effects of Marcus's prior poor example, which had supposedly ingrained inefficient habits in others. My blind spot was hardening, making it impossible to see that the very act of upholding my correct principles had directly triggered the cascade of negative outcomes. The office, once a beacon of my disciplined vision, now felt heavy with unspoken anxiety. The quiet efficiency I had cultivated began to morph into a quiet desperation. Agents, demoralized by the struggle to replace Marcus's lost portfolio and the constant pressure to hit increasingly elusive targets, started to burn out. Some left, seeking opportunities at other firms, perhaps even at Solstice, though I never directly confirmed this. The vibrant, if chaotic, energy Marcus had brought was replaced not by calm productivity, but by a low hum of fear and uncertainty. My carefully constructed system, designed to eliminate risk and ensure consistent performance, was instead delivering unprecedented instability. I responded by tightening the reins further. More mandatory training, stricter adherence to Atlas, daily progress reports, weekly performance reviews. I believed that if the system was failing, it was because it wasn't being followed enough, or precisely enough. The solution, in my mind, was always more control, more structure, more unwavering dedication to the right way. The annual review was always a significant event for Viridian Estates, a formal presentation to the Solara Group's executive board outlining our performance, strategic achievements, and future projections. This year, however, it loomed over me like a guillotine. The numbers were irrefutable. We were not just below target, we were significantly, alarmingly below. The year-end revenue shortfall was projected to be in the tens of millions, a catastrophic blow to our division and a stain on Solara's overall profitability. My meticulously prepared report, filled with charts on employee satisfaction, process optimization metrics, and projected long-term gains, felt like a desperate plea for clemency. The board meeting itself was a sterile, unforgiving affair. The boardroom, with its polished mahogany table and high-backed leather chairs, felt colder than usual. Chairman Sterling, a man whose gaze could strip away pretense, sat at the head, flanked by the CEO and other division heads. I began my presentation, my voice steady, my arguments precise. I spoke of the necessity of maintaining ethical standards, of fostering a healthy corporate culture, of building a sustainable future. I acknowledged the temporary setback in revenue, attributing it to external market pressures and the transitional of implementing new, more robust systems. I even presented a slide detailing the reduction in internal complaints and the improved utilization rate of the Atlas system, as if these operational victories could somehow offset the gaping hole in our financial performance. Chairman Sterling listened patiently, his expression unreadable. When I finished, a heavy silence settled in the room. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but carrying immense weight. Victoria, your commitment to process and your dedication to the right way are certainly commendable. However, Viridian Estates exists to generate profit, not simply to achieve internal harmony or system adoption. While your charts on improved internal metrics are interesting, they are ultimately meaningless if we cannot meet our revenue targets. The cost of purity seems to have been exceedingly high this fiscal year. He paused, his gaze fixed on me. Marcus Holloway, despite his unconventional approach, consistently brought in revenue. Revenue that, I observe, has largely migrated to Solstice Properties alongside Mr. Holloway himself. Can you explain how your decision, driven by these standards, has benefited the Solara Group? I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. Chairman, The long-term benefit of a compliant, ethical, and unified team will far outweigh the short-term loss. We are building a foundation of integrity. Our brand will ultimately be stronger, more resilient. My words, even to my own ears, sounded hollow, theoretical. The long-term, Victoria, he said, a hint of steel in his voice, is often built on a solid short-term. Our investors expect both. Right now, your right way has cost us market share, significant revenue, and, I might add, considerable talent, albeit unconventional talent. I have to ask, what is the value of a perfectly run machine that produces nothing? The meeting concluded without a resolution, but the message was clear. My carefully constructed edifice of principle had crumbled under the weight of commercial reality. I had won the battle for order, for control, for the right way, but lost the war for profitability. In the weeks following the annual review, the full weight of my victory settled upon me. Viridian Estates, while technically still under my operational guidance, had become a shadow of its former self. The office was quiet, yes, but it was the silence of a mausoleum, not a well-oiled machine. The air was thick with unspoken resentment and a pervasive sense of failure. We missed the annual revenue target spectacularly, triggering a ripple effect of budget cuts, frozen hiring, and a general air of austerity across the entire Solara Group division. My impeccable records and justifications, once my shields, now felt like the very evidence of my undoing. I was still director of operations, but my authority felt nominal, my pronouncements met with tired compliance rather than genuine engagement. I would often stay late in my office, long after everyone else had gone, staring out at the city lights. The panorama that once inspired me to see the world as a system awaiting my touch now felt indifferent, mocking. My life, too, had been meticulously structured. My financial independence was unassailable. My career trajectory was, until recently, perfectly linear, upward, and unblemished. I had cultivated an existence free from emotional entanglement, from the vulnerabilities of needing anyone, particularly a man. My relationships were transactional, built on mutual respect for independence, shared intellectual pursuits, and carefully delineated personal spaces. I had always viewed this as strength, the ultimate expression of control over my own destiny. One evening, scrolling through a professional networking site, a habit I cultivated for market intelligence, I stumbled upon an update from Dr. Alistair Finch, a forerunner of mine. He was a brilliant, compassionate physician, but our relationship had ended years ago because he yearned for a warm home, a shared life, and emotional intimacy that I simply couldn't, or wouldn't, provide. I saw those desires as weaknesses, as a dangerous surrender of self. His post was a picture, him, smiling broadly, holding a toddler, with a radiant woman beside him, clearly pregnant. They were standing in front of a quaint, traditional house with a picket fence, bathed in the soft glow of a setting sun. The caption spoke of family, laughter, and the quiet joy of building a life together. A profound, sickening wave of something I couldn't immediately identify washed over me. It wasn't envy, not precisely. Envy implied a desire for his life, and that was antithetical to my hyper-independent philosophy. But it was a stark, discomfiting contrast to my own perfectly ordered, yet utterly solitary existence. I had achieved everything I had set out to do: ultimate control, unyielding principle, absolute independence. My office was silent, clean, efficient. My personal life mirrored that, uncluttered by the messy demands of deep connection. I had purged the toxic elements from my professional environment and, inadvertently, from my personal one too. My theories had been flawless. My execution had been precise. I had done everything the right way. Yet, Viridian Estates was crippled, and I was, despite my professional title and financial security, deeply, profoundly alone. My independence was not a liberation. It was a gilded cage, built by my own hands, meticulously crafted from the very principles that had promised me success and fulfillment. The cost of order, I was learning, was often far greater than the value of the chaos it replaced. And the most bitter realization of all was that, for the first time, I had absolutely no protocol, no system, no theory to solve the crushing emptiness that now surrounded me.